So, about a few weeks ago, I watched a video called Objectification by the YouTube user Shield Apple, in which she posits that objectification is a term used by feminists to demonize male sexuality. So I watched it, I mulled over the points discussed in it, and I've been scripting this for a while, so I figured it was time that I shared my thoughts on the topic. So let's get to it. Is objectification just a term used by feminists to demonize male sexuality? Actually, I'm gonna say yes and no. Now, for the sake of not coming off too general or not having a clear definition on the terms that I'm going to use, so I'm going to establish what I mean when I say the word objectification, as it's been defined on Wikipedia, and that I accept is objectification is an attitude that regards a person as a commodity or as an object for use, with little or no regard for a person's personality or sentience. There's also a definition for sexual objectification, which, it's pretty much the same thing, but it's just sexual. But as defined by Wiki, is the practice of regarding or treating another person merely as an instrument or object towards one's sexual pleasure. Now, I say yes because they're the terms used within feminist theory that can be, and they are being used in situations where they don't apply. These terms are also being used as weapons to silence people whose positions and opinions don't conform to theirs, no matter if the opposing position has merit to it or not. Both these instances are wrong, and I definitely call people on that bullshit when it happens. There's a difference between telling someone, hey, you're really cute, or saying, oh, wow, that chick is hot, and being like, yo, sexy ass, or any other crude comments that are often passed off as compliments. Back when I first watched this video, I really felt, I really had strong feelings about the things that were expressed. So, rather than just jump off the handle and say things, just talk out of my ass, I went and I asked a male friend of mine about this. I asked him how he felt about the term objectification, and if he felt that it demonized him as a man. And he kind of agreed that in certain ways it does. For example, he and his wife were at Pride. They were spectating the Pride parade, and he saw a woman that looked really, really beautiful, so he commented to his wife that the girl looked really hot, really beautiful, really sexy, or whatever. And there was a queer feminist woman who heard the conversation and just decided to butt in, and she was like, well, this is not the time or the place for that, and you shouldn't be saying that about her because, she's not here to look good for you, and you're objectifying her, and blah, 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 and all that stuff. And he didn't have to reply to her because his wife did. And rightly so. You know what I mean? So yeah, there are definitely instances in which these terms are used incorrectly, or they're used to silence people. They're used to make men afraid to express interest in women, you know, when they're doing it in a respectful way and a healthy way, and that's not right. So I do agree that at times the term is misused and misplaced. Now, I say no because, well, you know, not all feminists do this. Duh. You know, I noticed, I've really been noticing that with these conversations with the whole gender war thing, or with gender rights issues, groups on both sides, women's rights and men's rights, tend to use broad generalizations. Now, I understand that generalizations have their place. They can get discussions started, but more times than not, they're used to paint the entirety of a group or a movement in a negative light, whether done knowingly or not. And personally, I kind of find it weird to even have to state that not all feminists behave in such a way, because, you know, it's not like every person thinks alike on a given subject. Another thing that Shield Apple stated in her video was that sex-positive feminists are hypocrites. And I gotta ask, how is that? You know, me personally, I identify as a sex-positive womanist / feminist. You know, I'm cool with women and men showing off their bodies and doing whatever they choose to do with them. That includes women and men who objectify themselves sexually for, you know, whatever reason. I can accept all of this with the knowledge that we still live in a society that's a bit hypersexualized. And I might even be putting it lightly by saying a bit, especially if we really want to get down to the nitty-gritty of things culture-wise. So, you know, the example that you used with 50 Shades of Grey, I think that's a bit of a non sequitur. If I remember correctly, that story, the series, 50 Shades of Grey, it deals with BDSM, you know, bondage, sadism, dominance, and masochism. And with that type of arrangement, with that type of kink, a man or a woman give their consent to be, for the most part, sexually objectified. That's pretty different from, say, some guy or some girl at the bar seeing someone that they think is attractive and acting out on that, feeling entitled to their body and touching the person without their consent. Because that's when objectification really becomes a problem. The ways in which it's expressed. You know, as humans, we all objectify each other at some point or another. Period. We do. And that's fine. You know, the problem is, as I said, how it's expressed. It's one thing to see a pretty woman or an attractive guy and think to ourselves, well, you know, damn, that person is pretty fucking hot, or they're sexy, you know, or I'd hit it, or etc., whatever. You know, it's one thing to think those things, and it's entirely another thing to act on them in a way that violates another person's boundaries. And there are times when this type of behavior is seen as a part, or is accepted as a part of male sexuality. And that leads me to question this concept of male sexuality, because I find that the current definition for it in society for male sexuality, or like more to the point, masculinity, isn't really a great one. It seems like there's this thinking, this mentality that, you know, men are going to be men, they have desires, and it's only natural for them to act on them in whatever way they choose. And whomever the object of their desire is, they don't really have any say in the process. And matter of fact, to even think that they do or say otherwise would equate keeping men from, just being what they are. And I think this line of thinking actually infantilizes and dehumanizes men, in trying to rationalize and justify some pretty disrespectful and not so great behaviors. You reduce a man to the level of an animal, so is that the type of mentality, is that the type of thing that you really want to classify as male sexuality? Just violating somebody's boundaries out of an assumed entitlement to their bodies, just because society deems that you act this way, that because you have a certain sex organ, that you're entitled to act this way towards other people. And this isn't to discourage healthy expressions of sexual interest. This is not to say that you can't flirt or, give someone a compliment, make small talk, etc., etc. This is not to discourage any of that. This is not to discourage any type of social interaction. Like I said earlier, we all objectify each other at one point or another. We definitely objectify each other sexually at some point. It's all right. The degree to which we do this stuff varies, and there are more healthy and I guess somewhat harmless ways to express it. It's when you feel entitled to that person's body, especially in regards to sexual objectification, and act on it in a way that violates someone's boundaries. That's when it becomes an issue. Sorry for repeating myself, but I guess I just want to make all that stuff clear. So I think it's important that when we talk about this issue, pretty much any issue within the whole crotch wars thing, to really consider variables, to take as many sides of this issue into consideration as possible. And it doesn't really happen because, people on both sides are stuck in this either or mentality. Meanwhile, people in the middle with a much broader perspective just look at both sides and just shake their head and get frustrated.